Hello, welcome to Show Boys. My name is Mike. Got a fun series for you guys here. Recently, in the recent past, we've covered The Chosen pretty extensively, and a new biblical drama has released on Amazon Prime, House of David, and we're going to be doing a little companion series for the House of David. I am joined by my good friends, Tim and Nina from Bear Fruit Podcast, and also like actual friends. I know, like, usually when I people, I'm not that I'm not actually friends with the people that I introduce on the podcast, but like legitimately, I see you guys like 3 times a week.
Like that.
You are actual real life friends. We hang out, give high fives,
Yes.
and stuff like that. So, thank you for joining me. This is going to be really fun. Porch Mike is back, and since my camera is usually really dark out here, I decided to use my cell phone. Now I feel like I'm telling like campfire stories. The light's like in my face, and but yeah, Tim, Nina, why don't you tell everyone what you guys are doing and planning to do over at Bear Fruit?
Yeah, we actually just recorded our first episode yesterday. Yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just going through and talking about different pieces of scripture that we feel like God is kind of like really highlighting to us. We're talking about different topics. Our first episode is actually coming out Thursday, March 6th, and it's talking about what it means to bear fruit. So kind of all encompassing, talking about what our podcast is kind of centered around, the whole process of bearing fruit and what that looks like and everything like that. So we're really excited. There's a lot of cool things on the way. We've got a giant dry erase board right here that just filled to the brim of ideas. You've seen it. It's stupidly large. So.
Can confirm it is literally giant. You could say that a Nephilim of a whiteboard.
It's true. True.
Oh, yes. So you guys watched the show, right?
Yes.
Okay, that would make tonight kind of a little difficult.
You tell us minute for minute.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, I'm actually really excited because I forget if it was on one of the many episodes of The Chosen that we did, that I did with James from Nerdy Bible, or if it was like in our Discord, or just talking with with Dad, not my actual dad, our editor. We kind of joked around about how like the story of David would make an amazing TV show. It could be like the less scandalous and like Christian version of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Because if you like, those of you who have read the Old Testament, especially First and Second Samuel, First and Second Kings, like it's all like political intrigue mixed in with, the story of God in the Old Testament and all that stuff. So there's a lot of interesting things and like history in the Old Testament and involved with David. So we always kind of talked about how it would make a cool show, and then all of a sudden I was like watching YouTube like I normally do, and I'm like, oh, a trailer for a show called House of David is, first off, let's watch it. Second off, I got to find out if this is like a real thing or like just some like fan made thing.
Yeah.
So many fan trailers out there that make me so sad.
Yeah. So watched it and then found out that it is a Prime show, and I got really excited. And they released the first 3 of 8 episodes last Thursday. So we had a lot of watching to do because we're going to cover all 3 episodes here of the initial release. So just like all of our other companion series, we're going to be doing weekly releases right after, on the back of the most recent episode of the show. So we had 3 episodes to watch, and they were very lengthy, like clocked in just under an hour each. So
just barely
a lot of watching. Yeah, I'm very excited. We do, the 3 of us, we do church together. so I know you guys love Jesus, but like, what is your excitement level when it comes to Old Testament stuff? Because sometimes for some people it's not very high, which is understandable. But
I get pretty excited about the Old Testament. Like I did a deep dive a while back on the Book of Kings and all that, and it's Kings and Judges are
It's intense, man.
intense, but
So intense.
it's like you said, it's kind of like a version of Game of Thrones that slightly less scandalous. Slightly.
I don't know if we can say
Slightly.
I mean, it's I mean, in terms of like what actually happens, I would say it's like on par with with what happens in that show.
I mean, yeah, that's
scandalous. Yeah, so many scandals in the Old Testament.
There is.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Old Testament.
Nice.
Yeah, there's just so many things that we learn from these stories too. So it's just, yeah, I love, like, I like telling stories, and so like Old Testament stories is like, yeah, it's, I just like stories, so that works for me. So
yeah. So one of the things that we're going to be doing, like always, we'll be reviewing and reacting to the show itself. But similar to what we did with The Chosen, we'll kind of talk about like what's biblically accurate, what has been embellished, or what they've taken creative liberties with. And yeah, I'm just so excited. I'm so excited. Maybe I'll just throw a disclaimer out there. The thoughts and views and opinions on this show do not necessarily reflect our church as a whole organization or anything like that. But yeah, I got some I like to get unhinged when it comes to the Old Testament because there's some crazy stuff. Like I love the the often put aside like supernatural aspect of our faith. And the Old Testament is full of that. And I can't wait to go through and talk about what's biblically accurate and what isn't, because I feel like for a story like this, for people who haven't read the Bible or are new to Christianity, the things that they would think are not biblically accurate are. And maybe some of the things that you think would be normal, like out of the Bible, might not be. So that's going to be fun to unpack. But yeah, so we start off with this awesome narrator asking, can history be changed, by, one little stone or whatever. And we see basically like the beginning of the trailer of the show was the start of the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. It's very cold on the porch. But basically, we start out. David is, I don't know, how old would you say he is in the show? Like 16 to 18, somewhere in the teens.
Probably around that age. Yeah,
he's a young.
He's still a lad. Tending his flock out in the field, and King Saul kind of in the height of his reign as the king of Israel. And we're treated with just this cool, we'll kind of tackle this in terms of like character arcs instead of just like chronologically how the episodes unfold. But talking about Saul first here, we're treated with this like really awesome battle against the Amalekites. And it's quite brutal. What do you guys think of, like, first off, the quality of the action here in these battle scenes?
I was surprised, honestly. Like I was like, okay, it can go one of two ways. One, it's a Christian show, and so
Right.
it could be like super lame, or two, it's Prime. Look out. And I feel like it kind of went directly between the two. Like they were definitely more action packed than I expected.
well, like, you remember that series, The Bible, that came out, I think like 2013.
Oh, the miniseries.
There was oh my gosh, there was a mini series called The Bible. I forget what company aired it or anything, but
it was on the History Channel.
Was it the History
I believe so.
Channel? But it was called The Bible, and they went from like Genesis through like they went through like the entire Bible, or up through the New Testament.
I don't know.
Like
we only
to
watched a
Jesus.
little while because it got a
Yeah.
little unbiblical.
But a lot of the
which is hilarious.
Anyway,
It's kind of ironic.
I feel like that was also when we were in our like uptight Christian phase where we were like,
I've never been uptight.
Okay, whatever. Anyway, the Bible the Bible series, but they had some really like the like they didn't shy away from the action scenes and like the war scenes. So it kind of reminded me of that a little bit, where I was like, okay, they're not shying, because like, you know, people think the Bible, you know, it's all, you know, it's spiritual and everything, but there's a lot of war, there's a lot of
especially
violence, like especially Old Testament. So yeah, but I know that, like, that they kind of encompassed that.
Yeah, I was shocked too, Tim, to say the least. Like, because you're right, like about 90% of Christian media is like very cheese, and like it's hard to. Well, it's not hard to, but sometimes I feel bad like ragging on it, because like the heart behind it is
right,
good, right? The intentions are good and pure, but you just like wish the quality would line up with like the intention. But we're starting to see that, honestly, with the last couple things. But yeah, so like Prime is behind this, but it's kind of helmed by the Wonder Project, and their CCO is I don't remember his name, but he was involved with like the Jesus Revolution and some of the better things of Christian media that have been out in the last couple of years. So all that to say, yeah, they didn't shy away with the battle scenes. Like I said, we get the Israelites in Saul's army, kind of led by Jonathan, his son, battling the Amalekites. And the Amalekites are like brutal. They describe them as like cannibals, and
blood drinkers, they kept calling them.
Yeah, blood drinkers. That's what it was.
Yeah.
So let's just get this part out of the way. Like, a big contention with the Old Testament. We're just gonna push the show aside for a second, and we'll just talk about the Bible. A lot of believers, I feel like, struggle to like what's the word I'm looking for? Reconcile how like the God of the Old Testament is versus the God of the New Testament, which, spoiler alert, same. He's the same always. But like the actions of the Old Testament, particularly with like the mass genocide that he sends the Israelites on, and we see some of that here with the Amalekites. But we'll just dive right in. Hot take right off the bat. We'll just throw this out there. See, I'd like to get your guys' opinions on this. But in Genesis 6, we see, they even talk about it in the show here, which this is one of the aspects of, you might think this is probably not biblically accurate, but this is actually very biblically accurate. But the fallen angels, the rebellion that happens in Genesis 6, where the angels rebel against God, they leave heaven, they come down, they see God's creation and the beauty of human women. They reproduce with humans and spawn this new creation, the Nephilim, the men of renown, the giants, like Goliath. And where I'm going with all this, I believe to make a TLDR version of this, because this is a topic that could be just an entire podcast on its own. Just
True.
have several weekly episodes just talking about this. But to fast forward, like those Nephilim become, I mean, they're part divine, right? They're part angel,
Demigods,
part human. Yeah. So one thing that I had always like wondered is, you know, who the little g gods were that these different people worshipped, and I believe that they were these Nephilim, right? And these beings like had actual like power and authority, not greater than God, but like could do things, right? So you have these little g gods like being worshipped and perverting God's creation and intention with creation. And you have, you know, the seed war and like all this crossing of bloodlines between fallen angel and human,
Wild.
and I believe like when God sent the Israelites into these different tribes and told them, hey, wipe them out, like all of them, leave no survivors, it was to like end these contaminated like perversions of God's creation, right? So you see that with I believe the Amalekites were one of those people, right? So yeah, anyways, where do you guys fall on that? I know this is a nice easy topic to talk about with people you do church with.
Local like conversation out there.
We'll just start the podcast off real easy. Just a little softball question for you.
Yeah.
I think that you're pretty spot on that. It's one of those things where like looking through like human eyes and everything, that you're like, well, how could God want this to happen? And you know, I thought that God loved everyone, and like when you start looking into the facts, like you said, like very well could be descendants of these Nephilim. Like at that point, he is trying to eradicate things that were never meant to be. So it's not his creation. So I definitely could see that being one of the reasons there. I think there's a lot of other things as far as like there's been times in the Old Testament where they talk about God choosing to destroy an entire city.
Dude, I do that all the time.
But like, you know, God goes decide to destroy an entire city, and you know, spoiler alert, a couple people get out every now and then. But I feel like some of it could be related to that, but also I think some of it is when there's things that are just like so evil, like God's just like, okay, well, that can't stand. But also we can't think like God does.
True.
So it's hard to really figure out. You look like you have something to say.
I do have something to say. Like,
all right, let's hear. All right, let's. Anyways, move. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, geez. Wow. I'll just leave. You guys can just talk. It's fine. No. So I see where you're coming from with that, but I also, Israel is God's chosen people, right? And like I don't know, like when Jesus died on the cross, for instance, like he died for Jews and Gentiles, so non-Jewish people and Jewish people, but Israel is God's chosen people. And like anybody else, like it's not that God doesn't love them, but I do believe though in the Old Testament, the culture in that time frame too, people like spirituality was a very big part of their culture. And so the more spiritual things they could do was like would increase their spirituality. And that's why we see the Israelites in the Bible, like creating other gods and, creating idols and worship, because they would add to it because they think like it's more spiritual that way. And so when you have other people groups surrounding, like I just see it as, what am I trying to say? Jeez. I think too, it's like what I've heard somebody say before, where it's like God saw the other people groups surrounding the Israelites, and he knew the effect that they would have on his people spiritually, with the pagan worship, the pagan idols, and like, the Amalekites, they said they were, in the show that they were, blood drinkers and cannibals and stuff like that. Like, he knows what kind of effect that would have had on God's people if they would have been allowed to stay. And so God's people, like Israel, was called to reflect God. They weren't even supposed to have a king, but they requested a king, and that's where we got Saul. But like, they were supposed to reflect who God is. And if they're supposed to reflect who God is, they can't be adding this other worship, this other spiritual side of things into what they're already into what God has called them to do. And because of the fall, because of the fallen nature that we have from what happened in the garden of Eden in the beginning, that like, because of that fallen nature, we're so quick to add on to what God has said, as believers. So I think like that's part of it too, where it's like God was like, okay, these people can't be around my people because it's gonna corrupt them even more. And so it's kind of like a protection thing, I guess. But we were just talking about this earlier. Like, with like reconciling certain things with God and his choices in the Old Testament versus New Testament and stuff like that. So I mean, it's a real discussion.
Yeah. And like, I guess, the obvious too is like the wages of sin is death. And that was before we had a way to be forgiven, kind of. I mean, so yeah.
The Amalekites, this was like their second chance. Like, before, when Moses was alive and around, like, the Amalekites were still there. They were there, and God said, we're not going to destroy them yet. Like, it literally says in the Bible, like, no, it's not their time yet. And so,
and also like one thing about God in the Old Testament, I feel like I'll just throw this out there too. This probably make people mad, but whatever. Deal with it, because it's true. Most of the people who have like these big issues with the Old Testament probably are people that have not read the Old Testament. Because God in the Old Testament gave loads of chances.
Oh my gosh, so many
like,
chances.
He was very gracious and merciful until it was like, okay, it's been your 11th chance, guy. Like, I literally don't know what else to tell you.
As parents, we all understand that as well.
Exactly. But yeah, so that kind of as a backdrop, kind of, to help bring a little bit of context to what this show is going to be talking about, really. But yeah, anyway, so we have Saul's army battling the Amalekites. They're led by Jonathan. They win, but Saul disobeys the commandment that he was given through Samuel the prophet, that just like I said a few minutes ago, like, he was told he needs to wipe them out. Like, you're not like their livestock, like everything. Do not take any plunder, do not leave any survivors. Like, you need to annihilate. But Saul does not do that. He actually spares their king Agag.
Agag.
Yeah, King Agag.
Hebrew pronunciation, but
well, anyone who's ever listened to Showboys knows I pronounce all names in unintentionally in the whitest way possible. So yeah, you should have heard me. I was talking about I was invited on another podcast to talk about a samurai game called Trek to Yomi. It was all in subtitles, and you should have heard me pronouncing all the names in that game. They were highly accurate.
Spot on.
Yes. But yeah, so he spares King Agag, and does also take plunder, which is directly disobeying what Samuel told Saul. Jonathan, my boy Jonathan, what a cool
My
dude.
boy.
He sees this happening and he's like, "Hey, Dad, like, didn't God tell you not to do this? Maybe you shouldn't do this."
Kind of his lines have been so far just
Yeah.
Didn't God say not to? Could you
Yeah.
please not?
Yeah, exactly. We just just summarize Jonathan's whole story arc in 3 episodes. Yeah, but Saul, he's like, whatever, dude. Like, I'm a good king. The people love me. Like, we're winning. We're hashtag winning all the time, bro. Yeah. So they like set up this camp here. They go up on this mountain or plateau or whatever. He like erects a victory stone
Monument.
Like,
Yeah,
his
monument to
honor,
himself.
his own honor.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. That's wild. I think we need to bring back victory stones. Like, we're not even gonna call them monuments. We're just gonna victory stones. Yeah. They set up this camp and he's got the king like tied, chained up in this tent, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I am so excited to talk about this. Did you know that he like Israelite slap fighting existed?"
Really?
I got so excited. Well, they're in the tent. Did you do you remember this part?
Yes, yeah.
I looked at Becca and I was like, I don't want to hear any more from you.
It's
okay.
biblical.
It's biblical.
Because House of David says so.
Exactly. I cannot confirm whether or not slap fighting is biblical or not, but it is in the show, and I got a real kick out of that because I love watching slap fighting. But yeah, they're partying it up in the tent, and the king's like King Agag's like kind of trying to curse them while they're all partying. Which, by the way, he was very dirty. Like, these guys should learn how to bathe, I think.
They probably bathe
like
while they're drinking it.
That's true. That's a good point.
Because they're gross.
And is cannibalism just like not good on the teeth? Or
I would
like
assume so. I've never seen a cannibal with good teeth.
That's true. I wonder if
Cannibal?
that's just like a correlation or like just a cause and effect. I don't know. We'll have to do some more research on that.
Research cannibals.
Bad cannibals.
Do cannibals have bad teeth? If that's the case, I'd be very worried about Europe. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm like getting off track here. Yeah, so Samuel comes in. Samuel,
my boy,
the prophet who anointed Saul as the king after the Israelites complained that basically he wasn't, doing it. It's like, Samuel, bro, come on, we need a king. Yeah, he comes in, obviously not thrilled to see the king of the Amalekites still alive, or all of the other plunder that Saul's army has taken, and kind of rips Saul a little bit here, and then takes matters into his own hands.
Yeah.
Very viciously executes the king.
Which actually,
that's straight out the Bible.
All of it, straight out the Bible. Like,
yeah, all this
word
maybe we'll asterisk the slap fighting, but the rest of this actually biblically accurate.
That portion of it, was basically word for word.
We can't say whether or not the slap fighting is accurate, but we also can't say it's not.
That's true. That's true.
They probably just had a different name for it.
But yeah, so like, you guys want to talk about? I'll toss the ball over in your court, and talk about like the conversation between Samuel and Saul, because he, like, in his ripping of Saul here, he's like, yeah, like, I think I'm gonna have to anoint a new king.
Yeah, that whole conversation, like I went and rewatched it because I'm like, okay, the big thing here is like he's giving this whole long speech and everything like that, and so I was like, okay, I want to go back to the scripture and see how much of it is. And like even Saul's responses, or he's just basically like, yeah, tell me, and all that, like it's word for word scripture. They threw a little bit in towards the end, if I remember correctly,
No, I mean, because like Paul begs for forgiveness, right? Like
Oh, that's
he,
right.
or
The only
Saul
yeah.
pleads for.
different Saul.
Oh my
It's
God.
not confusing or anything.
But yeah, that's right. The only thing they left out was in the scripture. Saul begs Samuel to go back with him to worship
save
with him.
face,
It's basically to
basically.
save face. Yeah.
Well, he kind of does. He's like, we can sacrifice like the whatever. Like we'll just get
Yeah.
one of their
Thanks for forgiveness.
rams or
I
something.
don't think in the show. I think Samuel just left, didn't he?
Well,
in the show.
he went. He hacked up a
Well, he
gag,
killed
and then
Agag first, and then he
yeah.
just left, right? Like he
yeah,
didn't.
he just
He didn't go with Saul to do anything.
he did a long extended mic drop on the gag and left.
Yeah. But that's also
Very extended.
like, very like
chopping up a gag is actually like what he would have actually done.
he cut him to pieces before the Lord.
Yeah,
That's what it said.
And by the way, basically, the book of the Bible we're in the show is First Samuel.
Mhm.
If anyone wants to read along,
It
which
basically,
I recommend that you should.
chapter First Samuel chapter 15 is where the show kind of kicks off with the Amalekites. And with like the Lord rejecting Saul because of his disobedience and Samuel's whole thing, like this was Saul's like third thing that he like did that like the Lord was like, okay, fine. Like this was like his like third chance, basically. Like the first time he disobeyed by performing a sacrifice without Samuel before a battle. And then the second one is he made an oath that nobody should eat until like the Philistines were defeated or something. And like that was like another big thing that he shouldn't have done. And like this was the third thing. And I guess his rise to power, there were three things too that led up to his rise to power. And then there were three things that as he fell from it too, which is interesting. But yeah, like it's basically like that scene, that whole thing was just basically right out of scripture, like where he has that conversation and Saul's just kind of like, I did what the Lord asked. Like he was completely convinced. He's like, I didn't disobey. And it's like, no, dude, he totally did. Like you totally
scary,
did
though.
not.
Like the people were scary though. It's like I was nervous.
Yeah. But I guess it'll be good to throw this out there too, just like unrelated to the show, but totally related to the Old Testament. And like it might seem silly that those examples you gave of like how Saul disobeying in those ways would anger God,
right?
But you know, God very clearly lays out like his laws in like Deuteronomy and Leviticus, which is before these, this book in the Bible. And the whole, like, first off, God is holy and we are not. So like there's just a certain standard that we need to live up to even be able to be in the presence of God.
Right.
But like I always thought the law provided in the Bible, like, everyone kind of jokes about like reading through it because it is a little tedious to get through.
For sure.
Unless you're very interested in knowing what, the different scenarios that you could do if like your neighbor's ox fell in a pit on your property and died, like unless that's your cup of tea, maybe getting through these books might be a little tough. But all that to say, like, I think the reason God provides the law that he does is to show like even more of a reason for Jesus and his sacrifice and like what that actually means. Like it's impossible to live up to God's law.
Yeah.
And you see that all throughout the Old Testament. And like with Saul here, like something as seemingly petty as, taking an oath not to eat until, a battle is won, like that's disobeying God. And like we cannot live up to that. And I think one of the beauties of reading through the Old Testament. You get a whole and entirely new understanding and appreciation for what Jesus actually did for us, and like why it was so important, and like also why what he did in his life, like why that was considered so radical at the time. But yeah, just I don't know why. Just thought I would throw that little nugget out there in case anyone's like, wow, that's like kind of a little petty, don't you think? No, well, yeah, maybe a little, but also God's perfect. So like, what else are we gonna do? But what did you guys think about how they executed the distressing spirit that comes upon Saul? So like, Samuel rips into Saul, and he's like, "I'm gonna have to find a new king. Like, the throne is gonna end here. Like, I got to go anoint a new king. Also, like, the spirit of the Lord is no longer with you."
Right.
And when the spirit of the Lord leaves, like an evil spirit like enters Saul. And as you see throughout these 3 episodes, really it's not a great time for Saul. But like, what do you guys think about how they handled that in the show, like visually, like how the actor kind of portrayed being, afflicted in this way?
So one thing that I was like saying to me, I was almost gushing about, I'm like the color theory behind it. Like when Samuel walks away and the anointing of God is gone, it goes from like all warm colors to all like cool blue, cold colors. And it's like you see that in also their castle and everything like that. Everything is cold and dark and nasty. And then but like earlier when you saw Saul, everything was like warm colors and everything like that. So they really did a good job with like the color theory to make you like see, okay, well, right now there's no anointing from God on him. So I thought that was like really cool. I feel that the way that they're showing the like spiritual side of things is like weird flashes of color. I'm like, I don't know how I feel overall on that.
Well, no, just like how like the actor is portraying being tormented.
Well, yeah, that
like,
I was just saying like as a whole, like the way that like they're depicting like the spiritual side of things. I'm not sure about that yet. But like I think Saul's performance on it is fantastic.
Yes.
One thing I can say about this show is like the acting is phenomenal. Like I haven't seen
it's been pretty good so far.
I haven't seen any acting that's been like, oh,
no
well, that's
cheese
cheesy
whatsoever.
Yeah, no cheese.
I can't help like but see David's eyes peeking over your guys' like camera right now in the background.
he's like, don't you dare say something.
It's like, what'd you say? I got a stone right here.
Don't throw it at us.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really cool, like how they depicted the beginning of his descent, because it's a big part of this story, right? And obviously David's life and all that. So it'll be cool to see how that develops. But that kind of wraps up Saul's arc in the first episode. Jonathan, like we mentioned, Saul's son, seems to, I don't know if he's like the leader of Saul's army in the show, but he obviously plays a very important role. Seems to be a pretty distinguished warrior. Him and Eliab, am I saying that right, or is that also very white?
No, it's fine. That's how I would pronounce it.
I won't do any better.
I think they Eliab is how they say it in the show. They're I'm like, are they pronouncing correct, like in Hebrew, like how the names are? Because like their B's are pronounced as V's, and like when they said Joab, it was Joab, and like I don't know. Samuel.
Yes. Is Eliab, is that one of Jonathan's brothers or just?
No, Eliab is David's oldest brother.
That's right. Yes.
That's it. That's right. They, after this battle with the Amalekites. Okay, so we watched 3 episodes, so I'm trying to distinguish what happens in which episode, but I think this happens
to follow.
There is, but after that battle, they get a report essentially that one of their like bordering villages or something was attacked.
Mhm.
So Jonathan, Eliab, they take a few people and head over to the village to check it out. They get there. They basically, the only survivor is this small mute child named Reuben. This scene not in the Bible, but
No.
added for dramatic effect.
Mhm.
But yeah, this village totally destroyed, charred stuff, bodies, arrows, spears, stalls, houses. And as they're kind of like walking through it and they find the boy and ask him what goes on, he doesn't answer, but we get like a little flashback, which was also seen in the trailer with the fiery arrows raining down from the sky and all the chaos and stuff. Jonathan expresses some concern about giants and Samuel's warnings, but those are kind of dismissed, except for the giant handprint that they find on the wall, which would be absolutely nuts.
Right.
Walk up and see that. But yeah, turns out the fiery spear javelin things were actually massive arrows, because when they walk by them, they have like the arrow like feather tails.
Yeah.
What'd you guys think about what happened here at this town and how they kind of introduced the idea of the giants?
I thought it was interesting. It's one of those things like in the Bible, it's just like, and there's a giant with the Philistines, and they do mention in other places that there are giants and people large in stature,
Right.
like the Valley of Giants, which
like
we
what is it? Og's bed dimensions, or like 13 feet by like something else.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they just like casually mentioned it in the Bible, like it was just totally normal.
Yeah.
And then when Moses out his spies, they're like, oh, well, there are giants there, and like reading into all that could, because of looking into stuff for this show, like that's the Valley of Giants that they mention in later episode. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool for them to be like, yeah, see, there are giants. They're not like super common, and everybody's terrified when they see anything from it. But I was just like, oh, we're getting a little bit of lore for Goliath. That's neat. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, a little backstory.
it didn't feel like anything that was like forced or weird or something that could be like out of place in this situation. So that was well done
for sure.
It was a good introduction, and like it's kind of the danger when you're like creating movies and shows based off the Bible, is like it's very hot issue, hot like content source material. Like you definitely don't want to bend things out of shape, but also the Bible does not provide a super ton of details. So when making a show,
how long the Bible would be if it included all of those details, like
or how short a show would be if it did not, embellish some details.
Yeah.
So it's very
the shadow that your hands are casting behind you, they look like giant hands.
Yeah, well, maybe there is one. I mean, it's dark. It's dark over there. I don't know what could be over there. Just a bunch of palm trees, or maybe giants. I don't know. But yeah, so we are introduced also to David, the main, character of the show. Obviously, we're introduced to him. He's just kind of like a little shepherd boy, little sad music making boy out in the field.
Very angsty.
I wonder if it's actually this actor singing. If it is, like, he's a very good singer. Like, holy cow.
I don't know.
I wonder at times. There's some times where like it looks like he's lip syncing.
Yeah.
But a lot of times
it very well could be pre-recorded. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of times for singing in TV shows or movies, they pre-record it and then they lip sync over it. So that could very well be the case.
Yeah.
Good either way.
Yeah.
It is. Whoever is doing the singing is a very good singer. Yeah, we get a little backstory of David. We get some flashbacks with him as a younger boy with his mother. We get a little introduction to David's family life, his father Jesse. Um, how did you guys feel about like their family dynamic? Because this, I would say, not biblically accurate.
You want to go first before I go into my rabbit trail that I wanted to?
Okay, yeah. Tim dug up some stuff on that. But yeah, no, like David is described like I don't know, like there's not a lot of detail into his family life in the Bible,
Yeah.
how his father treated him, or like there are like some things that we can infer from what we read, but it's not like spelled out. So like because of them just showing that his mother like had him out of wedlock with Jesse, like then like he is looked down upon, and Jesse kind of resents him, and like when you read the story in the Bible, like I just feel like it doesn't read like that. But like I said, there's not a lot of details. So I was raised in church, so like whenever I heard the story, like we didn't talk about Jesse, the family dynamics, but we know that he had older brothers, and they didn't always like him because he was the annoying little brother. But I mean, other than that, so I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of how they portrayed it, just because of what I have known of this story for so long. But what you found kind of makes it a little bit okay, I guess that makes sense, kind of thing.
Okay, well, if there's any accuracy to it, so
if there's any accuracy to it.
I did a deep dive digging into it because I was like, okay, they've got a lot of scenes with the mom, and not once in the Bible does it mention David's mom. So at that point, I'm like, okay, what's happening
Where
here?
Are they getting
where are they getting
from?
this information? Because like all of a sudden now, David, his exact words, he calls himself a bastard, and so I'm just like, okay, well, where's hey,
you praise the Lord with that mouth.
So when I was digging into it, apparently a lot of the information because like as I was reading through this, it lines up to what they're portraying in the show. So a lot of the stuff that they're pulling in is from Jewish tradition. So it's been like some writings and stuff like that, and verbal things that have been handed down over generations. So I guess I wish I would have written down like where it mentions it, but it mentions that his sisters are called daughters of Nahash. So they're actually technically his half sisters, which is also you see a little bit of like there's a bit different dynamic more than just because they're girls in the family. For them, they're always just kind of in the background, almost being ignored always. So,
classic woman in the Old Testament. No, I'm just kidding.
Literally in the time, yeah. Makes sense.
So for what I found, David's mother was originally married to Nahash, and there's speculation and all that David was conceived out of wedlock when she was still with Nahash.
Oh, spicy.
So that lines
Scandalous.
up with kind of what they were showing on the show, because like all the things that were said and how people acted and how Jesse lost his standing and some things.
Right. Yeah.
It all kind of lines up with all of that. How accurate all that is, I don't know. The site that I found had some biblical tie-ins to where they're pulling stuff from that with this thought process. And this was something that was written from like years ago, so like not even just off of the show or anything like that. But like it lines up with what they have, and so, but I'm a little bit iffy. I'm like, there's no like full on biblical thing on there, and they're except for like in the Psalms where David mentions that she's like followed Yahweh, because he says that I follow you as my mother did, and so with that you see that in that his mother was a follower of Christ. But but
Oh God, yeah.
yeah, well, not necessarily Christ, because Christ was
They're all the same.
Right.
So I mean, I guess it makes
semantics.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, and I think one thing also to keep in mind, like shows like this, I guess maybe not safe to assume, but I typically will assume if it's being created by like a Christian studio or someone who proclaims to be a Christian, kind of like The Chosen. Like The Chosen has a round table of people from like evangelical pastors to like Catholic priests to Jewish scholars, like on this round table that they kind of like bounce their scripts off of to be like, is this accurate to the culture back then, Mr. Jewish scholar? So I would assume that a similar situation probably happens with this show where they're like, maybe that's where they got this dynamic from. Like you were saying, Tim, like they're asking people who spend their lives like researching this old historical stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah, it is interesting because, like you said, his mother. I think she like it. Just the fact that he had. I mean, obviously he had a mother, but like I think he like references his mother maybe one time in one line of a psalm,
Mhm.
like, and that's it. Not like
Yeah.
no detail, just like something like, oh yeah, I had a mom. Anyways, so like, of course, you got to have like drama in your biblical
Sure.
drama. So yeah, I mean, like, my wife was like, "Hey, I feel like Jesse loved David." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know, maybe. I mean, but also maybe. I mean, we love our kids, but sometimes we discipline them, you know."
Mhm.
But anyways, yeah, we see Jesse and David's relationship maybe not exactly like in a super great place at this moment. I think it could have some underlying tones of like what you're talking about,
Mhm.
but we also get this whole like lion beef between David's family and this lion that just roams the pasture.
For the law.
Yeah, does this happen in this episode
Yes.
or 2 or 3 where we find out that the
And
lion
well, no,
ends?
that's this episode ends with him killing the lion.
Episode 2.
You get lion lore in episode 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we'll save that for then. But maybe that lion lore part 2, might also explain their kind
The
of like,
character arc.
yeah. But yeah, so we see that David has been beefing with this lion for a while. Takes a little nibble out of one of his sheep.
Dealing with some fear. Yeah.
Yes, of course, naturally. I mean, when you see a giant lion like 10 feet away from you,
lion.
I would.
Yeah.
um,
The king, he called him.
Did he?
really?
I think that's, if I remember correctly, he called the lion the king or something like that.
Oh, maybe that's where the Disney got it from. It's a terrible joke. I'm sorry. But yeah, that happens, and then the whole like Goliath battle that was in the beginning of the episode, right? That's
Yes.
kind of how we
That's how
started.
it opened up. Yeah.
So we're gonna do a great job. Naturally, we'll talk about what happens at the beginning of the episode at the end of our recap of said episode. So,
To be fair, it's from later on in time, just happened
that's
in
true.
wrong based on the episode.
Yeah. How about the podcast is in chronological order and the show
Yeah.
needs to do a better job?
So we'll talk
Okay.
about the beginning of this episode at the end of the finale episode.
Yeah, exactly.
What actually
Exactly.
happens.
Yeah. So this was one thing so I watched this with my wife, and her parents are staying with us right now, hence Porch Mike. And they were kind of their feathers were a little ruffled at this part. But I told them, hey guys, like just calm down. We don't know. We don't know what they're doing with this.
I think a lot of people's feathers were ruffled because I actually saw like on social media, like one of the movie posters and people were commenting on it, and
Yeah.
I think
Heretics.
literally one dude who hadn't even watched, you could tell he hadn't even watched the show, was like going out
poking the bear.
like just
Yeah.
I was just like, I could tell you haven't even watched it. Like, why don't you just chill out? Like, it's the beginning of the show. Like, we haven't even gotten to that part yet. So like,
Right.
let's chill
Yeah.
out.
So as the narrator is talking, like, oh, can a man change the course of history with a stone? You see David like winding up his sling, running across the thing after we're introduced to Goliath, which honestly, I mean, that maybe on par with like at this point Disney CGI, which isn't amazing, but like also not super bad. I mean, what do you guys think of how they portrayed Goliath? Like, did it look bad to you?
It felt kind of stylized to the point where it reminded me of. Did you ever watch the movie 300 years ago?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course. It reminded me a little bit of that style.
Oh yeah.
And I think they did a lot of that. So
Okay, can I just? When I was reading through the Old Testament earlier in the year with my commentary Bible, I'm so sorry. I do this all the time. I'm a terrible podcast host. But I was reading
my podcast,
and
Tim,
bro,
jeez.
I saw like in the notes they're talking about the Persian king Xerxes or whatever,
Mhm.
and then I was like, this can't be like the same one. And it's like not that far off in history. Sometimes when I read through the Old Testament, I do this with my job too, because I research land ownership and I have to go back like certain projects. I would have to go back like 200 years to figure out who owned this piece of land originally, right? And I'm like, I forget that like that was a long time ago, but like also not really that long ago. So like life wasn't like, you know, like super primitive then because they were actually drilling for oil not that long ago.
Right.
So like I do that a lot with the Old Testament when I'm reading through it. I like forget that like, you know, it's like it was a long time ago, but like other things were happening. Like, it wasn't just like this group of people were the only people that existed in the world.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that like that you brought up 300, and I was like, when that happened, and I like looked at that, I was like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
what is wrong with me? Why am I so dumb? Why do I think like the way I do?
we all do. Time's a weird thing.
It really is.
Like I saw something recently. A little rabbit trail here. Like the Roman Empire was still a thing when the United States became a thing.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Gone that long?
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So the Roman Empire was still around in 1776.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was like 18 something is when they were officially.
Was this like a? What brought this up? We were talking about it.
Well, we're talking about the stylization of Goliath. That's why we're here.
No, but I was saying like when you brought up the Roman Empire the other day, like when you brought this up to me. What,
I'm a man, and we're always thinking about the
Yeah, exactly. Come on, you're not seeing the memes, Nina? Come on.
No, I thought it was a Doctor Who related thing because we've been watching Doctor Who. So
it was Doctor
anyway,
Who.
There was some artists too that I keep seeing memes about, and I don't know like how accurate this is because I'm lazy and American, so I didn't actually like look anything up. But like I think it was like Da Vinci or something. Like it died in the 70s.
I think it's something like that. Yeah.
probably.
And like I'm sitting here thinking he was like in the 1300s making these crazy paintings, and he like literally died 50 years ago.
Time's a weird.
Time's so weird.
Dude,
So
really
stylization, yeah,
of
reminded me of
Goliath.
300 a little bit. So I don't think it was like poorly done. I think you're right on it's on par with Disney, not just
which
Channel,
which maybe not like maybe not like something to brag about, but like not terrible.
right. Like they're not going to win any awards for it, but they're also not going to make anybody feel that it looks bad. I feel like they probably have a budget for their CG, and they're going to make it look better for the 2-part finale where it's going to show more. So they're probably like, you know what, let's shroud him in darkness a little bit so we don't use up all of our budget on there. So it happens a lot on shows actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it looked bad.
Yeah, so Goliath like makes his way through the army, like asking for Israel's champion, right? And then David comes running out and he's like winding up his sling and then just like takes a spear to the side and very anticlimactically falls to the ground.
My David didn't get hurt in the Bible.
Yeah. So what did you guys think about that? Because they were like, what the heck?
I mean, at first I was kind of like, what? Because the show opens up like that. And when it is so very like opposite of what the story actually says in the Bible, it's kind of like, wait a minute, what are they doing? And
Time
so
out.
like this is not what this is not how this story's supposed to go. But I think that's the point, you know.
I think like my prediction is they're going to kind of show bits like that are like a little bit off, and then we're going to find out later that it's going to be David's fear creeping in a little bit, and then we're going to see actually the biblical thing where he goes out there like a gangster and
he does like
uncircumcised Philistine.
Yeah. I am so on board to see that.
Yeah, dude.
So because I'm like, he didn't just run in there.
No.
Goliath.
Yeah, he was trash talking.
Goliath was laughing at how puny he was.
Yeah.
And everything like that. So like, I'd be surprised if they're not doing that way, but I think they did it as a people want to watch it just to see what else they get wrong, and then the finale they're gonna be like, oh,
you have to be spicy. Like you gotta live on the edge a little bit because no press is bad press. Like you gotta get the talking going. But yeah, I want to see David like do like the Steph Curry slingshot where like he releases and then immediately like turns around. He doesn't even like wait to see if it hits. He just knows it's going in.
For his sword afterwards, but
he forgot it back there. He had to
Goliath sword is somehow on the the Israelites.
Yeah. Don't ask. It doesn't matter. Yeah, so I agree with you, Tim. I think it's like because you have the narrator talking about like fate and like destiny and all this, and like so it could just be like exactly like you said, doubt and fear going through David's mind because sorry, I got the hiccups. In the trailer, he's talking to I forget which character, but she asks like, "Are you afraid?" And he's like, "Well, yeah." She's like, "Well, I believe in you," or whatever.
That was Michael or Michael, which actually we watch everything with subtitles because we're old.
I get it.
There's subtitles.
So you get fun little things like when Saul's spouse speaks, it says Saul's spouse.
Doesn't even say her name.
Didn't have a name, but the narrator is
her name
actually
is only mentioned once in the Bible, by the way.
Yeah, so well, I mean that's why she's just Saul's spouse.
Yeah.
But the narrator is actually Michael.
Oh, okay, nice.
So it's kind of interesting that they did that. It's something that you only know if you watch it with subtitles.
Right.
Later on, they're going to reveal it, but that'd be a silly reveal.
I mean, it did show that like David's laying there with the spear in his side, and like he's bleeding out or whatever, and like she comes on and she's like, I ask again, like, can one stone change the course of history? And he's like reaching for a stone as he's laying there, and so I'm just kind of like, okay, like
it's like
are they going to run with that, or are they? Is it going to be smoke and mirrors kind of?
I think it's like a Loki Doctor Strange thing where like he sees all of the timelines, but there's only one outcome, right?
Timey-wimey, spacey-wacy stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. We're just seeing one of the times where he failed. But yeah, no, definitely, I think ruffled some feathers. But
what is interesting is like so in Scripture when he comes up like to Goliath, and this might be a little spoily, but he says, "You come to me with sword and spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord." And he doesn't say that in that scene,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
he fails. So I
Yeah.
wonder if it's maybe like him trying it in his own strength rather than
Yeah.
relying on the Lord's strength.
Could
So
be.
little.
Yeah, I don't think that's how it's gonna play out, guys. So just like smooth those feathers out a little bit. We
Calm
still
down.
got 7 episodes to go.
Yeah, calm down.
Um,
It's gonna be okay.
but yeah, like you said, the episode ends with David defeating the lion, and also Samuel preparing to head out to find the new king to anoint, because he took that from Saul.
Mhm.
Yes.
So we're tracking real good. It's only been an hour, and we've only talked of 1/3 of the things we need to get through tonight.
We're gonna have the same runtime as
Yeah, exactly.
itself.
Exactly. We're actually doing pretty well because before we actually did some math on like some of our runtime versus like airtime of shows, and it was like for every 30 minutes of a show we talked an hour. So we're like lining up like minute to minute almost. So we're doing good. We're doing good.
Efficient.
But yeah, so episode 2 starts. We have another flashback. We get some more like David/Lion lore.
Baby David.
Yeah, we see.
His mama.
Yep. Does the subtitles give her a name?
Jesse says her name.
Yes.
It starts with an N.
Let's see if I can butcher that and do the white guy thing here too.
Nice.
Nitsavet.
Nitsavet.
Nice. That was not that white. That's pretty good.
Nitsavet. Yeah. And she apparently was a seer. That's what they kind of made
they
it
say
seem
in the show.
Yeah, in the show that she was a seer. Which
You want to explain seers for our audience, and definitely not
Sure.
me.
So seers
Totally, just for the audience.
Yeah, no, seers were basically like the prophets, where like they could see, like the Lord would show them pieces of the future, like would show them things, not necessarily for the future, like maybe like
Or in like the spiritual realm.
in the spiritual realm, like open their eyes to what's actually happening in the spiritual realm, or open up, something that's going on in a person's life that they don't know.
Samuel was called a seer in the show too.
Yeah, Samuel was called a seer. So like, yeah, somebody who speaks for God, basically, hears from God, speaks from God, sees from God. So that's basically
just another word for prophet, essentially.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But yeah, so like there's a scene, what were they were they like going to a well or something? Like what was the scene with him and his mother, and then there were like other people around? Like what were they doing? I forget exactly.
They were seeing the planets and everything align perfectly.
Oh, that's right.
That the Earth was created.
Which happened.
By the way, just happened like the other day here.
Yeah.
And we missed
the planet parade. It was on Friday.
In Hebrew, like everybody else.
Yeah, we didn't know the Hebrew song to sing.
Well, you also probably were busy watching, 3 hours of this show, and
you were correct.
Go outside and actually look at something really cool. So
according to the show, it'll happen again in 28 years.
Nice. So we'll be around then. So
that's not what I saw. It wasn't going to come back for like 300 years.
Okay, so let's talk about something that's biblical or
I don't know.
That's we'd be a party pooper. But yeah, so they're out there doing not what we did on Friday.
We didn't go see parade.
Excuse me. And basically David's mother was confronted with these like family members.
Tribe
members, probably
okay.
members of the tribe of Judah.
Yeah, so they're giving her some guff, and she's like, "You shut your mouth."
She went all mama bear.
Yeah, she did. She made him so mad he spit on the ground. That's like one level away from tearing his shirt, or is that just like grief? I don't remember.
It's grief.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah.
Sick enough, you might be in grief.
But yeah, she stands her ground, sticks up for her and David. She, like you said, she's a seer. She has these visions of David's fate, tries to I think it's either like on the way to this or as they were leaving this like planet viewing thing, she tries to like teach him how to hear God.
Yeah.
So back afterwards.
Yeah. And yeah, so there's a lot of like her kind of like trying to, you know, do what any of us try to do as parents who are believers, and that's like, you know, lead our children to God too. So it's kind of cool to see. But what wasn't cool to see was the lion lore. So we understand what this beef was between King and what's David's last name?
I don't know. It's the House of Jesse.
No.
David, Ben, Jesse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they use the word like yeah, Ben is like how they
Of
yeah, in Hebrew, I think. Yeah.
they didn't have
Something
last.
Okay. Nice.
But
But
it's
yeah,
House
so
of David.
that beef between King and the House of David. They're just kind of chilling in the pasture. Lion comes. Actually, David's just chilling.
Where
Yeah.
he
Lion
wasn't supposed
comes.
to be.
he wasn't supposed to. He got
They're
upset.
always
Didn't he? He got upset.
always
He
getting in
went out
trouble.
there.
These
His,
kids.
his brothers were being rude because
Oh yeah, they wouldn't play
Oh,
with
sword fighting. That's right.
Yeah, they wouldn't play with him, and so he leaves, and she tells him, "Don't go past the gate," and he does.
Yeah, whatever,
and
Mom.
He's like,
Yeah.
"I know," and he keeps going, and she follows him, and the lion is out there.
Yeah. King's just waiting and hungry, and she protects David. Does she like lure the lion out, or does the lion just go for her and she's like, "Get out of here, David"?
Ran towards the lion.
Yeah.
She ran.
towards it.
That's what
Yeah.
it seemed like. I don't think they actually showed her running towards it, but she told him to basically get up and run, and then she runs past him, and it seemed like she was running in the direction of the lion, screaming and acting all crazy to get him
So
distracted.
he would chase her. Yeah.
So he would chase her and leave David alone.
Right. So that didn't fare well for her.
He did not.
Turns out,
Yeah.
stronger.
So maybe don't run at a lion. But
for when I go to the zoo.
yeah, in doing so, though, she does buy David some time. He gets back, but she gets attacked by a lion, brought back to the house. And this is kind of what I think is the beginning of the rift between David and Jesse.
Right.
Because essentially David, being an angsty little boy, got his mother killed by a lion, which, you know, obviously kind of sucks.
Yeah. For real.
Yeah. But, you know, all these are kind of like flashbacks, but we get to see later in the episode David returning from the end of episode 1 where he went to the lion's cave and killed the lion, and he's got like the teeth or like claws or something. He like declawed some of the lion.
It looked like teeth, but maybe it was
No, I
claws.
think they were claws because
They kind of like look curved a little bit.
Yeah, I guess claws make sense.
Which, dude, that's like kind of baller. Like, he goes into his home, kills him, and then takes his fingernails. Like, that's like actually borderline like serial killer stuff. Like,
What the amount?
maybe Jesse needs to talk to David a little bit. Be like,
David is a straight up gangster.
yeah, is this a healthy way to deal with your trauma, David? Yes. Anyways,
he didn't have any loving parents after the whole lion thing. So he's like, you know what? Do what I want. And they gave it to his sister as a gift.
Yes. Yeah, he did.
Some fingernails.
But instead of like, you know, being happy or proud, the return of the Israeli slap fighting happens, and Jesse just gives a big old slap right across the face, and we see
that he tells David he loves him.
Yeah, I love you so much.
Give him the fivefold ministry right there.
That's right. And his little sister is like the only one that's happy to see him, and he gives her the claws. Yeah, so we get over to Saul's story arc here in this episode. Continue to see his decline. They're in the fortress, like castle here. Again, this is all like Samuel chapter like 15 and 16. The distressing spirit is still tormenting Saul. Michal is very worried that he's kind of like losing it. He hasn't been sleeping. She seems to kind of be like, my hand does look really big. So, I get so distracted. Yeah. She seems to kind of be his like, watching him at this moment at least. Because when she's like relieved, she kind of has like a little breakdown of what's going on. And I mean, I can kind of relate to that. We had a brief moment with our oldest daughter where she was like having these ridiculous nightmares for like 6 months, and it was like I know exactly how she felt. I was like, I've been there. I get it. But yeah, again, like I'm digging the decline of Saul and like how they're handling. I think like it's really cool to see like what's going on here. What are you guys thinking?
I think it's really cool because especially like we've said, like the Bible doesn't provide a lot of details. And like so when you read it, like just says like there's a tormenting spirit. And you kind of see the decline as you read as Saul's story progresses, even after David is anointed as king and everything. But like seeing it fleshed out on screen though, like it does like I said, I've been going to church for a long time. So like these stories are very familiar to me, but seeing it fleshed out, like just like I was like, oh, like no, like this is actually pretty. I feel like it's pretty spot on with what he was dealing with, and it kind of just shows me a new picture of like what he actually went through, rather than just like he had a tormenting spirit, and then all of a sudden he hated everybody. And, like that's basically how it's described. That's basically how it reads, and but so you're not like necessarily like visualizing what's actually happening.
Right.
So I think they did a fantastic job with that.
And it's like a combination of the tormenting spirit, also Samuel being like, yeah, you're about to be replaced as king too, by the way. Yeah. the thing you really enjoy, that's being taken away from you.
Yeah. Well, and then it shows you like how it affects his family, because you even like you don't like it affects his whole family line, because like he was supposed to reign in Israel as king. For his family line was supposed to be royalty forever, and so now like that possibly being taken away, and so like they're really mad at Samuel, and they're like his Saul's wife, we see her taking things into her own hands, trying to save face, trying to save their family line and stuff. So it just like the whole thing is just and I guess I never really thought about the political aspects of it all either. Like I said, you just read it and like it's great, it's the Bible. I have nothing bad to say about it or anything like that. But like you read it, but like for me, like I guess my mind never went to the political aspects of it, or like all of the details that surrounded that, what that would have meant for them. So
yeah, I mean, man, it would be so awesome if the Bible was like hyper detailed and all that stuff, but like we're also talking about like centuries of history.
Right.
That would be a lot of reading.
It'd be so much.
And also, like, as interesting as this stuff is, like, it's all minor and relatively to like the point of the Bible.
Exactly.
So like it's cool to like learn and speculate and like uncover nuggets from history and stuff, but at the end of the day it's like whatever. But yeah, so we're introduced to, well, not really, I think he was in the first episode, but Abner, Saul's kind of like advisor, kind of plays his role kind of gets a little larger in this episode moving forward.
I think he's actually like the captain of his guard.
Yeah, he's kind of like the king's
Yeah.
hand or whatever.
Yeah.
So, obviously he's a little concerned, along with Saul's wife, the queen, and the rest of his family, about his declining health and his erratic behavior. But that all kind of like grows a little, larger, this concern, when Saul tells them what Samuel told him, like at the tent, right? Where he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, Samuel said that, I'm not going to be king anymore. Whoopsie." That, the spirit of the Lord's not on me anymore. But no big deal. It's fine.
It's
The
fine.
dog in the burning house meme is Saul right now. Everything's fine. It's okay. But yeah, and he's also like, also don't tell anyone, please.
Right.
So Abner then's like, yeah, Samuel, isn't that kind of treasonous, don't you think? And the queen's trying to kind of like reassure Saul, like, it's you're fine, it's not that bad. Like, you're gonna be good. You're a good king. Look at you, all these dubs, like all these cool victory stones. Like, we'll just go take a walk. We can look at all your victory stones. It'll be okay.
People love
You're
you.
doing good. Yeah. Saul's like, thanks, I appreciate it. And has Abner have Samuel followed. And then secretly, as he's like getting ready to leave, Queen kind of pulls him aside and is like, also, if you could just kill whoever he anoints, that would be great for us. Please. Thank you. Do me a solid. And yeah, that's kind of the Saul and his family kind of arc here. So Abner kind of gets sent out on this mission to kind of, what's the guy's name from The Chosen, who's always like eating the apple, that's following Jesus around and kind of like reporting back? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I don't remember his name.
It's kind of like the Roman CIA guy.
Yeah.
That's kind of like,
but I don't remember the name.
yeah, that's kind of like Abner in this show. He's now on this secret Saul CIA mission to overthrow Samuel.
And then Abner immediately pawns it off on someone else.
Yeah, exactly, as they all do. I mean, that's just delegation. So,
Jeez. I don't think Abner doesn't have better things to do.
Right,
Guards to look after.
He's got that majestic beard to groom. I mean,
it's so well groomed.
It's very nice. We are introduced to the Philistines and their king, King Achish.
Yes.
Ah, yes.
And he's one of 5 kings, actually.
He is the king.
Yeah. Philistia.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
There's 5 kingdoms within Philistia.
That's right.
And Achish is the king of Gath. His kingdom is Gath.
That's right, Gath. See, there you are.
Nobody else wants to play with him. Apparently.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. The 4 other kings, they refuse. Because he kind of like calls this meeting with the 5 kings. And he's like, by the way, Saul kind of losing it. This would be a great time to attack the Israelites. And the other kings, they kind of weren't having it. They didn't want to play. They think Achish, he's just kind of like personally motivated by the small, tiny fact that Saul killed his father like a few years ago.
It's like, no.
Maybe not.
No big deal.
But yeah, so they still aren't buying it. They're not big fans of Achish, so they kind of all leave and throw some insults on their way out, which was quite rude. But determined, Achish is like, you know what? We'll just go. We'll go find us some of these new gods to help us out.
Some new
and yeah, some big shoes to fill.
quite literally.
Yes. So yeah, we're introduced to. Next up we have Mikhail, Joab, and Eliab. They all travel to Judah for some rando's wedding. Just nice gesture of the king to come show some support. What's the Mirab? Is that the other daughter?
Yeah.
Man, she is like so annoying. Not a fan.
I think she's supposed to be.
Yeah, well, she crushes it.
Yeah,
She does
She is-
such a good job.
she's doing her job well.
Yeah.
Ash ball, both.
Yeah, Ashball, yeah. Oh. Oh. Notice how we haven't mentioned him at all, even though he's been in every episode.
Yes. Tell us about him.
Oh, so they pinned in episode 1. They kind of seem to be pinning them, keeping all the riches from the
Yeah.
battles on him, convincing him, which not scriptural, but sure. And then he's supposed to also be in battle, but he's like, you guys got it. It's fine. I'm just gonna do my rich guy thing. And
Oh yeah, dude.
Pretty girls.
He's also a giant turd. Man, and I can't remember the actor's name, but he just like he looks like he could be that dude's brother, which is great thing to say when I don't remember his name. But
one guy with the face.
he plays the dude. He was in the last season of Stranger Things.
No.
I'll look it up.
I don't think it's this person I'm thinking of.
Next time you guys talk for an extended period of time, I'll do some Googling. But yeah, Mikhail, she's like David's there, by the way, hired musician for the wedding party going on here. He's just like slaying the harp over there, starts just belting it out like he's just in his own world. And Mikhail, she's like, well, that guy, pretty good, a little handsome, can really play that harp, can really sing those songs. But Joab, he's like not having it. Think maybe he's a little interested in Mikhail. Essentially, this is just kind of the introduction of David and Mikhail, right?
Yes.
Eliab gifts David a metal knife from the Amalekites, and I love David's like whole interaction here. Yeah, he's like, "Oh, thanks." It throws right in the fire. And he's like, "Why'd you do that?" He's like, "Well, first off, why did you take that? You were not supposed to."
Exactly.
Just instantly.
Yeah.
Doesn't even
Just
have
nonchalantly just tosses it in the fire. Like,
yeah, that part was good. I actually laughed out loud. That was funny.
that was a good one.
But yeah, what do you guys think about this Joab fella?
I don't remember too much about him except for the fact that he was
protecting the princesses.
Yeah.
Like he's like in the military in Saul's army.
Yeah, I mean he's doing his job, but also hoping that he'll get a pretty girl in return.
I think he's after Mikhail and is hoping for her hand.
A little extra tension in there, because why not?
You know.
Yeah, gotta have those romantic storylines.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of the whole point of this like little wedding scene, kind of put
I think
Mikhail
it's
and
also
David in front of each other.
Mm-hmm.
that, and I think it's also lining up some other things that are in the storyline, like further on.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Do tell.
like with Saul's tormenting spirit, like somebody suggests, what if we get somebody to come and play music for you to kind of soothe you? And somebody's like, I know this harp player in Judah, his name is David. And so that David gets called to go play at the palace.
Biblically, it's one of the servants that they tell them, but in this case, I think it's going to actually be
it might be Mikhail who tells him about it. But
yeah.
Seemed like, oh, I saw this cute boy. I mean, this really good musician.
Yeah.
Because biblically, didn't David marry her?
Yes.
And not like even see her before? Like, wasn't that kind of like his his spoils of defeating Goliath, basically.
I
If
think
I'm
no.
remembering right, or maybe I'm misremembering.
Yeah, I think it's after. Yeah, it's after he kills Goliath, and then he marries her.
It doesn't really mention, but he at that point he had already been in the palace playing for Saul, so chances of him seeing her are pretty high. So he was probably like, "Hey, I saw you look at my daughter. You want her?" Which
You seem to be glancing in that direction very frequently.
you help me out a lot, so I will do you something as well.
Yes. Thanks for helping me out, bro.
Actually, biblically, Saul wanted to marry David off to Merab because he thought
dodged a bullet there. Let's just get that out of the way.
He said to him, "But first you must prove yourself to be a real warrior by fighting the Lord's battles." And he thought, "I'll send him out against the Philistines and let them kill him rather than doing it myself." Because at this point he was really jealous of David. And David is like, "Who am I to marry your daughter?" Or who am I to be the king's son-in-law? And he was like, and Saul was basically like, okay, and gave Merab to marry somebody else. But then Saul found out Mikhail had fallen in love with David, and he was like, oh, there's another chance for him. Like, he's got to prove himself by going and fighting, and he'll die, so I don't have to kill him. Somebody else will kill him for me.
Right.
So that's.
And you know what? David took that and tucked it in the back of his brain. He's like, you know what, Saul? I see what you're doing there. Might have to try that out later.
Right. This could come in handy. We'll remember.
Yeah, actually, not a terrible idea. So I found the actor that I was thinking of. His name's Joseph Quinn. He played Eddie Munson in Stranger Things the last season, and is, I believe, going to be the Human Torch in the new Fantastic Four.
Oh.
But yeah, look at a picture of him. Tell me he does not look like the turd son of Saul.
Ashball.
Does he not? I mean, it's the eyes. He's big eyes. They have big eyes.
He looks like Mark Zuckerberg.
The human version of Mark Zuckerberg.
The actor that reminds me of the guy who plays Eshball, I don't know his name, but he was in that movie. Have you seen the movie Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger?
No, but you talk about this movie a lot.
Okay, it's a fantastic movie.
Not
a lot. Have I said it a lot?
No, she talks about Princess Bride a lot.
Yes,
that too. Yeah,
but I think I've talked about it recently because we watched it recently.
Yes,
but anyway, his arch nemesis. I don't.
Oh, the king? No, the
curly. He's got dark curly hair.
Yeah.
He's I don't know
that guy.
name.
That one guy.
He's like the arch
Man,
nemesis.
you guys are doing about as good a job as I did.
I know.
Yeah, that one guy plays that character.
That one guy, I'm gonna look it up because
that one movie.
He looks.
All right. While you're looking that up, we'll continue on with David's kind of arc here. After the wedding, he's kind of showing off his little slingshot skills, just popping pottery, and kind of
the potter's so mad there.
Yeah, he's so angry. That was actually very, very rude of David. But yeah, he kind of makes a bet with his brother that if he can break 2 stones with one shot, I guess, of his slingshot, that he has to go and talk to whoever, I forget exactly who.
He wants to be a soldier.
Yeah, he wants to be a solger.
Actually, he would have had to talk to the exact guy that hates
Joab.
him.
That's right. Yeah. And Eliab's yeah, not gonna do that. But David gets 2 jars with one sling of his shot, one shot of his sling shot. That's just any way that you say that just does not sound right. I don't like it. I'm uncomfortable. We're gonna move on. But yeah, eventually, his brother just kind of gets annoyed. He's like, "Whatever. You want to see war? You want to be a warrior? You want to see battle? I'll show you. We're gonna go. We're gonna take a little field trip,
like any good would do."
Yeah. So they venture out to that like bordering village, so David can see the destruction of war. And along the way, there's kind of like an almost like touching sibling brotherly moment where David like asks Eliab about like what their like mom was like, and he kind of it's like kind of an awkward conversation, but eventually he's like, yeah, I just kind of like feel bad because I wasn't very nice to her, essentially something along those lines.
I wish I would have treated her nicer or something like that.
Yeah, sorry, I got little buggies flying around out here. But yeah, they make it to the village. It's, of course, still destroyed. But they're not the only ones there. They actually run into King Achish and the Palestinian army, or at least parts of it. And David and Achish have this little confrontation. You remember exactly like what they say in this little conversation?
I don't remember what they talked about, really.
The only line that I remember is him saying something about like the Lion of Judah or something like that, or it's something about lions, and David just goes, "I killed a lion."
Yeah, that was pretty cool little way to diffuse a conversation. Didn't work great, but like,
I killed a
he's
lion.
like, oh, actually, now you mention it, I just killed a lion. And if I was Akeisha, I'd be like,
okay.
very taken aback, but also like impressed. And I probably would have had to ask a little more about that, but instead,
tell me more before
yeah, exactly. How did you do that? We got none of that, and instead David got an arrow pointed directly at his face, which never good. And Eliab comes, saves David. They have a fun little almost, I guess you could kind of compare this to like Christian Old Testament version of the scene of the Netflix Daredevil series where the Daredevil is like fighting all of the criminals in the hallway staircase. You know what I'm talking about? That's
Yes.
kind of like a similar type like scene that we have here where Eliab's just kind of like just having his way with these Philistines as they're like leaving the city. It's kind of like cool little fight choreography going on here, but for David wanting to be a warrior, he just kind of stands there and watches a lot.
He doesn't try to help. He doesn't do anything. He's just like,
No.
War is scary.
Yeah. Would have been a great time to use slingshot. Just saying.
I mean,
he had it right in his hand.
Yeah, I mean,
pick up any of the rocks that were laying around.
There were a lot. We'll just say that is all rubble, David.
He did use it one time.
Oh yeah.
Yes, to distract them, and then he ran. He just did it like as he was jumping. He threw it. And
then, he jumped. Yeah, because he jumped out of that window thing. Yeah, that scene. That was a cool one.
He did it one time, and then was just like, you know what, that's enough.
Yeah, he's like, actually, my arm's a little sore from earlier. Like, I just need to give the shoulder a rest. But yeah, Eliab like
show off some more.
Yeah, exactly. Eliab, I think, gets stabbed at one point in this, but then definitely gets shot by an arrow as they're fleeing.
Which this is not in the Bible either.
Right. This was another moment where feathers were a little ruffled on the couch.
I do think David meeting Achish also is lining something up for future also, because in future Bible story, when Saul is chasing David actually seeks asylum with the Philistines, thinking he'll be safe there from Saul. And he actually goes to Achish, him and his buddies, who's
True.
Yeah. And so I think that kind of is setting up for that in the future, because like they met before. So.
David comes into town and he's like, "You that guy that killed that lion?"
First off, tell me more.
Yeah, I actually have a lion problem myself. Like, yeah. So Eliab takes an arrow not to the knee, to the like shoulder area, and David huffs him back to town. Yeah. And then actually we're doing a little better in our pacing for covering episode 2. We only got like 2 more little sections to talk about.
Well, it's easier because there's not a whole lot of scriptural stuff to go over in episode 2.
That's true. That's true. And I think we got most of the rabbit trails out of the way.
Yes.
But you never know with me. I'm a wild card.
So is this guy.
Oh man, Tim, if you and I mean, we are doing it right now, but I feel like we could reach some record-breaking podcast episode lengths.
There is a chance. There is a
Probably.
chance. That's why we brought in Nina, so she can try to keep us on track.
That's true. By the way, it's Nina's birthday today. Not
Yes,
when you're watching this, but
Happy birthday.
Everyone tell Nina happy belated birthday.
Chat or whatever is on this.
Yes. Okay, so up next we have
yes.
We know what we're talking about. Anyway, go ahead. Next.
We get more Jonathan in this episode. Excuse me. At the fortress, Abner and Jonathan are having this little like, this has to happen in like every one of these medieval like any type of like time period where there's sword play, like this scene happens where it's
Sparring
like
sesh.
the king's guard, like general whatever, is like training the young kid and beats him in a sword play sparring session. But that's kind of what happens here. Abner's trying to prepare Jonathan for kingship. Of course, fearing, Saul's current mental state in decline. And sorry, these hiccups, man. They're so dumb. Saul actually comes in and makes things really awkward. It's like,
yeah.
I wanted a sword fight.
Yeah. So get out of here, Abner. And then proceeds to just like beat the crap out of his son.
Yeah. No pulling punches and the bloody nose. Like,
yeah.
Breaks
Nice
his
little.
sword in half, so now he can't play anymore.
Yeah. And then just headbutts him.
straight up head. Nobody wins.
Nobody wins with his head.
But yeah, I mean, this isn't like exactly this scene, but it kind of like plays off of 1 Samuel 20:33. Like Saul does later try to kill Jonathan in anger. So he's not actually trying to kill him here, but like kind of like Nina said, we're setting the table for some future stuff.
Foreshadowing, yeah.
Yeah,
I could if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Well, but also
But
I think
didn't.
could like right before he came in, Abner and Jonathan were talking about Saul and the madness that he, and like Jonathan becoming like is next in line. And so like maybe Saul overheard and he was just putting Jonathan in his place. Like,
oh yeah, that's definitely what happened.
that's exactly what happened.
I was like, oh, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
Friends?
Oh, nothing at all. Definitely not you.
Just sparring.
But yeah, for some reason, Jonathan remains hopeful that Samuel will forgive Saul and that God will return, favor back onto the house of Saul. But yeah,
because Jonathan doesn't know what Samuel actually said.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because it's secret. Only Abner and the queen know.
Right. Yeah.
Hush.
But yeah, so Saul kind of tells him like, oh, he's just like a jealous old man. Like, he doesn't have my power or influence.
Right.
Even though he's like literally the voice of God. Like, don't know how much more influence he could possibly have. But yeah, so later that night at the fortress, Saul goes on this like violent dream nightmare rampage through the castle. Again, like we see like a very cool and interesting depiction of like the tormenting spirit that's afflicting Saul here. The queen obviously not feeling great, a little scared. But yeah, in this like nightmarish state that Saul's in, like he again kind of fights Jonathan in the hallway,
Yep.
but this time not with a wooden sword, with a very real sharp sword that he is dragging through the hallways, which was terrifying. But was it Abner that comes and like helps pull Saul off here?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that was a great like ending to the story arc here of Saul in episode 2. Definitely Jonathan, if I was him, I'd be like, bro, you're giving me like father issue complex. Like you've tried to kill me twice now. Like what the heck's going on, bro? Yeah,
Sorry.
episode 2, how you guys feeling at this point? We're 2 episodes deep. Like, you still thinking it's doing a good job?
Episode 2, I remember when we were done with it, I was a little bit nervous because like my notes for that episode were basically, where's the Bible? Because like episode 1 very heavily was in First Samuel, and you like got a lot of that. Then episode 2,
It's kind of filler, Bible filler.
it felt like filler.
Nothing can go wrong there.
Right. It felt like filler until you got episode 3. Then I feel it kind of put a nice bow on it. I think that's probably one of the reasons why they did the 3-episode release, so people could get that context of those 3 episodes to fully know how the show is going to work. I was a little bit nervous after episode 2 because we actually took a break after each episode to kind of gather our thoughts and everything like that. We didn't like binge watch or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I was nervous, but since I'm to the point where like I'm cautiously optimistic about it again. But how about you?
I mean, yeah, it's yeah, I think I was the same as you. I was a little nervous about what direction they were taking with it. And I was kind of like, this kind of feels like the House of Saul instead of the House of David, because but to fully understand David's story, you have to understand Saul's story a little bit. So because it's very much intertwined.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I understand why they needed to do it. And so I'm, but yeah, because I'm kind of like, I feel like we're here in House of Saul right now, and we're in the House of Saul, not the House of David. But I think they're, like I said, they're doing a good job depicting the torment. They're doing a good job cinematically. I think they're doing a great job. I try not to come with too many expectations with anything Bible related, because the Bible is very specific and it's very, it has specific things in it. And so like when you add the filler things, it's up to interpretation for people, as long as it's not completely blasphemous, I think, it's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's a conversation that, excuse me, that I have often. It's like, I heard it put this way, and now it's all I ever want to say because it like is the best way to depict this. It's like you don't want to like major in the minors, right? The stuff that isn't like directly tied to salvation. Like at the end of the day, like doesn't really matter.
right.
I mean, like it does matter, but like also in the like grand scheme of things, like not as important as the other stuff. So yeah, there's that's kind of again like the dangers that you have when you're doing things like this or The Chosen.
Yeah.
You're always going to ruffle feathers because I mean, how many denominations are there of Christianity? A whole lot, because a lot of people do major in the minors. And but yeah, we're actually on episode 3 now, guys.
Woo.
We
Yeah.
made it. We made it. And I know we're kind of like zooming through like some of the stuff that happens, but we're also trying to cover 3 episodes, so deal with it. Moving forward, like as you know, the podcast series continues, they're only releasing 1 episode a week, thankfully.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm not like, when I heard they were doing 3 episodes at launch or whatever, I was like, okay, these have to be like 30 20 25 to 35 minute episodes.
Nope.
No.
1
3
hour.
hours.
Yeah.
I think
So
the
yeah.
shortest was like 54 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're trying not to have like a 5-hour long podcast episode to start
Right.
off.
Mhm.
But yeah. And more of Saul, you know, kind of just picking up where the last episode left off. At this point, a lot of the couch discussion here at home was like, do you think they're focusing too much on the torment and like the evil spirit, the, you know,
I said
pagan witchcraft, the dark side? Do you think we're spending a little too much time on the dark side?
Note number 1 for episode 3: why so much focus on evil?
yeah, we literally said that. Like same thing.
That's hilarious. All right, well that sums that up then. Yeah, they do spend a lot of time, but also I think like, how do you strike like the appropriate balance? Because the Old Testament and even the New Testament is full of plenty of evil,
Mhm.
because that's like, you know, the whole reason Jesus came. That's like our battle is always with wow, that's so rude. I was like in the middle of talking. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll mute her next time.
No. I am notorious for coughing and clearing my throat, so I'm totally just giving you a hard time. But yeah, like our battle isn't with flesh and blood; it's with, you know, principalities, right? Like spiritual warfare is a big part of everyday life of a believer, and even for people who are not believers, they might not fully understand, but like everyone goes through it. So like, it is a big part of the Bible. It's a big part of everyday life, but like also you don't want to like focus too much on it, right? Because we don't want to glorify it. But yeah, it's funny that you guys had like the same exact thought as the couch over here, which I'll call our watching collective at the Courtney household.
That I feel like that was like our thoughts at the beginning of the episode, but I feel like towards the end, when it got to like the final moments in the episode, it almost felt like a but God episode. So it was like a lot of like bad stuff, but God's doing this. And so I feel like that's kind of how they were starting to wrap it around there. We do kind of feel that like there's a lot of moments that like should almost have a little bit more about God, especially in a show that's about a person that's known as the man after God's own heart. Whereas like he defeats the lion and he screams out in victory.
Big adrenaline.
Like a big adrenaline thing. Like they almost could have made it so like afterwards then he falls on his knees and worships God.
But they
or something
could be
like
showing the growth in that too.
They
like,
could be.
going into that,
but a lot of it seems to be put on
his mother.
He sings the worship song that his mother taught him. His mother quoted the Psalms that he has yet to write. So there's a lot of things that we notice that like are being placed on the mother. So I'm hoping that we see like him turn more towards God. So we see that and after God's own heart.
Yeah.
Now that he
now that it's been anointed and everything like that. But I feel like they did a good job. Like as the episode as a whole, Yes, there's a lot of evil, but there's also a lot of good that was shown in there as well. So
Yeah.
I feel like they balanced the episode overall good. It's just like they front loaded the evil so much.
Yeah. Yeah. It is important though to like be able to fully understand Saul's part in David's story because it's it's
Sure.
such an important part.
For sure.
But yeah, so Saul suffers another nightmare,
Real bad one that time.
and like almost killed his servant
Oh
at
no,
this point. No, he does later
Oh.
actually kill. But this one, I think he just like no. This one he like snaps at his
Oh, that's
servant,
right,
like
yeah.
spills the wine or water or whatever.
Mhm.
But yeah, this the like reoccurring vision or dream or whatever shows Jonathan dying in battle and like Samuel's like final prophecy of God rejecting Saul's kingdom.
Mhm.
But yeah, so but yeah, in one of his nightmare dream like fevers, he just totally spears his one servant like
His servant.
right in the chest.
Messiah.
Yeah,
Which
definitely.
almost is foreshadowing scripturally to like when he's going to be throwing the spear at David. I feel
Mhm.
Yeah,
because
nice, very
that's
nice.
in there. So I feel like there's a bit they've been doing a lot of foreshadowing, in this, or we're reading too far into it and
Yeah.
we're like, oh, they're not
We're
going
gonna be
to at all.
disappointed.
Wow, spoiler alert, Tim. Jeez.
More than 2,000 years later, it's fine.
Yeah. By the way,
You haven't read it by now.
yeah. Come on, get with it. So then we get some recovery time with Eliab. Eliab. I don't know. One of these days I'll pronounce it the same way, like twice. But yeah, so David gets him into town. Doctor or someone rips the arrow out,
Just
and
straight up his dad and his
dad.
brother.
Yeah.
there you go.
It says, I want you to stand here and hold him.
Yeah.
See the pain that you've caused.
That's
Oh
what he
yeah,
says.
very, very, very nice. Man, David just cannot catch a break.
No.
Everything's his fault.
Yeah,
He-
but it's okay. It's okay though, because he plays the harp for him to ease his pain.
Yes.
So that's
Also foreshadowing.
Which, by the way, I mean, his family totally loves the harp, especially his dad. So I'm sure that just made that whole moment so much more smooth.
I seem to recall the last thing he said about that is, I don't want to hear that ever played in the house ever again. And then he promptly is like, oh, Dad, you're upset about him being hurt.
Yeah.
Well, let me play my harp. You ever get your kid a drum set?
Oh yeah, dude. Oh man, David would be so obnoxious with that. Oh geez, but yeah. So we get to check back in with Abner. He's in the midst of finding someone to delegate his task of following Samuel to.
I don't
and is this guy's name Doug? Dog?
do it.
Doeg? We'll call him Doug. Well, it's
Doug,
just
yes.
it's just Hebrew for Doug.
Doug and all of his fancy piercings.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is like the pre-Roman version of the Roman CIA agent from The Chosen.
Yes.
Which I wish I could remember his name because I actually quite like that character from The Chosen. Yeah. So Abner goes into this dude's shop and he's like obviously not a cool dude. He's like experimenting on rats and stuff, and Abner's like, hey, by the way, could you follow our good friend Samuel for me? And
Can I go?
yeah, basically he's like, you know what, maybe not Samuel, but whoever he decides to anoint as king, sure. And Hebrew Doug's like, you know what, I don't like Samuel, so sure, let's make this happen. And he does mention Saul's curse, but Abner kind of dismisses it as nonsense because no one's supposed to know about it, right?
Right.
But apparently, like, word's getting out somehow, or somebody's like seen Saul in his frantic state at some point, and word's kind of getting out. We get to check in on Samuel in this episode, actually twice. How'd you guys like the first scene of Samuel like talking with his wife? That was kind of funny. It was kind of like threw a few jokes in there. Like it was pretty cool. But basically, he's like praying to find this new king, right? That he needs to anoint, and has this conversation with his wife about how like this might not end well for him. But yeah, what'd you guys think?
I liked how it kind of like humanized him.
Yeah.
Like because everybody in this show, treats him a very specific way because he carries the word of God and everything like that, and usually he comes bearing bad news, and
Yeah.
and so like him being more humanized and everything like that, I think is good as far as like from a watching point. So I can definitely see why they did it. I kind of liked how they handled that.
Yeah, I liked it too. Like, yeah, definitely humanized him and just showed that like he's just trying to do what God wants. Like he's just
After he finishes his tea.
finishes his tea. Like, yeah. But like, yeah, he's just trying to be obedient. He's just trying to do what God is telling him to do. And it's hard. It's difficult. And so it kind of just shows that he's just not just doing this and it's easy for him. So I thought that was kind of neat to see that side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is cool because like oftentimes doing the things God is asking you to do is not easy. So it is cool to like see that be relatable, like in a visual sense with a character from the Bible. I mean, it's like written in the Bible all over the place, but it is always cool to like see like, oh, I'm not the only one that has a hard time
Right.
doing the things God is asking me to do. But yeah, so he's kind of like preparing for this mission to find this new king. But obviously, when you're trying to find a new king while the current king is still alive and reigning, probably they're going to put you in a precarious spot there.
A king that people love.
Right. Good king. Many victory stones.
The king that that was just praised by the leader of the tribe that you're getting ready to go to anoint the new king.
Yeah, that guy's like a big doofus.
Such a politician.
Yeah, for sure. We get to see how the queen is handling Saul's decline here. She definitely does some politicking here with the servant's mother. And a little bit of a royal cover up going on with the whole death of the servant boy. She what do you recall, like the story she concocted here?
That somebody broke into the palace and tried to assassinate the king, and he threw himself in front of the spear was supposed to kill the king.
Yeah, what a hero.
What a hero.
Died a hero's death. But yeah, that actually is not what happened.
Come to find out.
Yeah. What is it that she gives the mother? Like
some scriptures that she had on her bedside table. So historically, because scriptures, like it's not like today where you can have a whole Bible or anything like that. They'd have like pieces of paper with like a scripture written on it. So it looked like there was like 3 or 4 pieces in there. And so she passed that off, and that's why woman was like, no, that's too holy or whatever. And she's like, no, I insist. And then because that woman at the time wouldn't have known how to read, she's like, well, what did they say?
True.
So
That's
that's
true.
why she tells her what the scriptures
I will
say.
never leave you nor forsake you. Yeah.
And then that's what Jonathan asks about when he says your bedside scriptures are missing. Where did they go?
Mm-hmm.
He's asking about that basically, and it's kind of a good visualization also, where she's like fully letting go of like God in this, and like leaning into their power was like representation of that, because it goes from she's got those scriptures because they're doing this with God. She's going to keep it in mind to, oh well, I don't need these because I've got my man and I'm going to protect him.
Yep.
So
Protect our house. The
yeah,
house
it's
of
our
Saul.
house.
Yeah. Wrong. You know, what do I know? Yeah, actually, she ends up after this having a conversation with Abner, asking basically for him to help her contact a medium because his mother is one, and Abner does not like to talk about that because obviously frowned upon.
He ain't about this life anymore.
Yeah, he's like, I've left those streets, woman. But yeah, she talks him into taking her to Basai, who is a Baal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Baal. I've always, I think like the pronunciation I've always heard is Baal, but it's Baal, but that's the pronunciation I've always heard. But I think it's actually Baal. Baal. It's like a baller. Ball.
Yeah.
Ball.
It's not late, guys.
Ball.
But yeah, so Bensai is actually pretty shocked when the queen lets down her hood and she realizes that the queen is there asking for her services. Particularly because Saul outlawed idolatry and these practices. So it's a little awkward when the wife of the man who made your lifestyle illegal comes to you for help using said lifestyle. She's like, "Is this a trap? This better not be a trap." Yeah, what's up? You gonna say something?
No.
She's just saying it's a trap.
I was saying it's a trap.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to cut you off. But yeah, so Queen's like, no, it's not a trap. You can do this. I need your help. And she performs some ritual that's supposed to remove the curse, but to remove it, you gotta like put it on someone else. And she makes this weird like voodoo doll. But Samuel's spiritual power is too strong because he's a man of God.
Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of this whole thing. Later, Jonathan actually spots Basai at the fortress, and in a bold son move, tells his mom that she better not turn from God. And that's where you get the whole house of God. Like, no, this is the house of Saul. It's like, lady, do you not see what's happening to your wife right now, or your husband right now? Maybe I would not be stepping out of line.
Right.
And continuing on with Saul's whole like, ouch, you know, sorry, these bugs, man. But his whole like overarching story arc in this episode, Hebrew Doug is in hot pursuit of Samuel. He travels to the city of Ramah and didn't quite catch him while he was there, but kind of like bribed a local to tell him which way. He saw Samuel and Samuel's apprentice go. And after this, of course, everyone knows who Samuel is, right? Because he's like the prophet. So hard to kind of like be discreet if you're Samuel or traveling with Samuel.
Yeah.
But Hebrew Doug does catch up to where Samuel and the apprentice make it. However, before Samuel sneaks off to go, where is he? Is he going to pray, or is he going?
At that point, he's going to
ahead.
Yeah.
That's
He
right.
told his apprentice that he shouldn't be there because his apprentice has a child on the way, and so he's like, "No, this is gonna be dangerous. I don't want any harm to come to you." And
So you stay here and wait for me to return.
Ouchie. Yeah, well,
wrong choice.
unfortunately, Samuel's seer powers were not
They did
working then. He did
not.
not turn the switch on.
He did not see it coming.
Yeah, because
He
Hebrew
did not
Doug.
see Hebrew Doug coming.
Yeah, Hebrew Doug. Man, he just tortures this poor apprentice for information, and that was very sad. Because yes, before that whole campsite encounter, the apprentice was all happy because his wife's expecting, and it's their first child. And Samuel, they're having a moment. Samuel's like, "Oh, I'm proud of you." And yeah, and now we don't even know if he's alive anymore, which is very sad.
I'm gonna assume probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah,
He said that his knife he was going to use is meant to cut deep. So I'm assuming that it's not good.
You want to know how I got these scars?
Hebrew Doug is hot.
So Hebrew Doug was like, "You want to know where I got this knife?"
From ostrich bones.
From ostrich bones.
Yeah, it's a very random question, but since you asked, ostrich bones actually make great knives. You're about to find out.
Glad you asked.
Yeah. Yeah, I could just see it on your face.
You're very curious.
So we're going to save Samuel and David's part for last. But we get a cool scene of Akish traveling to the Valley of Giants and making it to their like cave house, I guess. Which like it's a big cave. It's a house of giants. But yeah, there's like this massive door on this hillside, mountainside or whatever. And he like talks to this lady who's like, anyone who comes in here, they don't leave. You sure you want to do this? And Akish, man, he's, you know what? It's what I always say. If you just say things confidently, like, you know, maybe whoever you're saying it to will believe you, or in this case, maybe you'll believe yourself that you will not be eaten by giants or whatever happens. Yeah, he ends up going in, talking to this lady who did not look like a giant. She's a normal, yes, normal lady. Did you catch her name? Because the notes here say the Giants' leader is Oprah. Which
I think it's Orpah. O-R-P-A-H.
Okay, that must be a typo then, because it definitely says Oprah. And I was like, that's...
Well, when
you get a giant. You get a giant.
Yeah, that's what Akish is hoping for.
Everybody gets a giant.
Like whenever I've read that name in the Bible, like I've read it as Oprah. So
okay, nice. But yeah, basically Akish is somehow able to convince her to form an alliance to help crush Israel. And she agrees and introduces him to Goliath. And actually, his brothers were there too, at least a couple of them. I don't know if all of them were, but there was more than one giant that stepped out from the darkness there. So we have that little partnership brewing now.
Side note about the brothers stepping out. She said, "This is my largest son," but the brothers in the back seemed like they were larger.
That's a good point. That is a good point. And he had 4 brothers documented in the Bible, right? So there were 5. Goliath and 4 brothers. Yes?
So I don't know off the top of my head.
I don't know.
But that sounds like it could be a thing.
Yeah. Anyways, again, I didn't take my own advice and say it confidently. I asked a question. I should have been confident.
Do you a favor. I'll Google it.
Nice. While you're doing that, we'll touch on Saul's last little section here, and then we can get into Samuel and David. But Saul and his family kind of like make their make another attempt to like show that he's not losing his mind. And he kind of like there's a scene of him like making this triumphant return back to his throne.
Yeah.
And like all the elders and visitors come in and they're like, "Oh, King Saul, you're so awesome. I love all your victory stones, and I don't know any king that has as many victory stones as you." And they are, at least to our knowledge, unaware of what's going on with Saul and his decline. Right now, only Hebrew Doug is the only person outside of the Queen and Abner and Saul that actually has verbalized the downfall of Saul. So we have this like public show of his, like, I don't know, display of power, I guess, to help convince himself that he's not actually losing it. Did you find anything, Tim?
4 brothers.
Four brothers. Yeah. Happens every once in a while.
Not to be confused with the movie 4 Brothers.
Oh, it was a good movie, though. But they were not giants.
They were not giants.
No. I think Mark Wahlberg is actually quite small.
Yes, he's a wee little man.
He's the opposite of a giant. But yeah, so the episode ends with Samuel reaching David's town here and asking specifically for Jesse, which kind of was a shock to I don't even remember his name. Do you guys remember his name?
The leader of Judah.
The leader who is like a big doofus.
I don't remember if they ever even said his name, did they?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't think they did.
He probably introduced himself in the episode 1.
Oh yeah, probably.
That Roman officer in The Chosen, his name's Atticus.
Atticus, that's right. Oh, I love that guy.
I want to say Atticus, but I'm like, no, that's a counting machine.
Yeah. Atticus is the counting. Close.
Yeah, Atticus is awesome. He's always eating like a persimmon or whatever. I don't even know if it was an apple. Yeah,
always. But, always snacking.
Yeah. Man after my own tummy. Yeah, so Samuel's here in Judah, asks to see Jesse. That kind of is a shock to the leader of the tribe here because Jesse's kind of been outcast. But Samuel makes it over to Jesse's house. He's got his little bull. Like, it's like, yo, Jesse, what's up, dude? Like, let's go do sacrifice together. It'll be great.
Let's go, man.
Yeah, just like the old times. Jesse's like, all right, I guess. It's like, why are you here? Yeah, they head out. What's up?
Well, no, I was gonna say, like, because like back then, like, you didn't want a visit from the prophet.
You didn't.
Typically, they brought very bad news, and so anytime that they showed up, you're like, "What did I do wrong?"
Oh no! It's like going to the principal's office.
Exactly. So, like, they weren't necessarily excited to see Samuel. They were all worried about, like, what? Because a lot of doom and gloom.
Yeah, I also think I might try to put out an audiobook of me like summarizing the Bible. I think it would take off pretty. It'd be phenomenal. It'd be really relatable.
It'd be like Sunday cool teas with their Gen Z Bible.
Yeah.
That's so true. But yeah, so they go out to make the sacrifice, saying maybe not we all, but the story is pretty familiar. Samuel asks to see all of Jesse's sons. He goes through each one. Here in the show, he only kind of like makes a remark for what?
It was so funny.
Yeah, like, he only like,
oh yes, you're so great, but your heart goes the next one.
And then the other two, he doesn't even say their name.
Yeah.
Like at least the first three says their name, and then he's like, "No, it's not you."
Not once.
No, it's not you.
Hasn't said those other two's names.
Yeah, it's so rude. So rude.
Poor guys.
But of course, he's like, "Hey, do you have any more sons?" Blah blah blah. He's like, "Yeah, I got that one loser. He's out with the sheep." Like,
Basically,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so they get David. David comes and
Send for him, and they're like, okay, well, we can sit down and eat. And we're like, we won't sit and we won't eat.
I love that.
yeah, that was hilarious.
That's
Like,
actually
okay,
straight out of scripture too.
He
He's like,
just
no.
stares them down after.
He's like,
We
no.
won't sit or eat.
I'm like, dang it, we can't eat because David's
yeah,
not here. Dang it.
just another reason for
Elliot,
Jesse
I
to be
told you
mad.
to go get David, and you don't go get him. Like, please.
Oh man, yeah. So David comes. They have a moment. That is some like thick olive oil.
So
Like-
it didn't even go all the way down his face, just
No,
stop
yeah, dude,
almost in his eyeball.
that had to be very awkward. Like filming, that. Just like having molasses like dripping down your face. Yeah. So he anoints David. He says, like, man looks the outward appearance, but the Lord looks the heart. Oh, so good.
And he squeezes his peck.
Yeah, he's like, oh,
He did. It was weird. He could just put his hand there, but he just went
Oh my
yeah, just making sure he's awake.
like this.
But yeah, of course, that is a shock to everyone, right? Because David, smaller,
youngest.
young, no one likes him. Yeah, so Samuel finds his king and anoints him, and David's like, "Wait, what?
Yep.
Excuse me, come again?"
And all of his brothers and his dad too are like, well, what?
The whole time his brother is just like, is he gonna chop him up?
Yeah, Eliab was like, is he gonna kill him? I will kill Samuel. I will drop Samuel right now.
He's
If,
ready.
like he is ready to fight. I feel like he wasn't injured 2 days before that.
Yeah.
Hear about my brother in this moment.
Yeah, finally. Yeah, how do you think this was portrayed?
I
I
thought
think it lined up pretty well. Like,
Yeah.
are you happy with
Yeah,
how it played out?
I thought it was kind of cool, like how they kind of showed like the spirit going on him or whatever, the anointing going on him.
Oh yeah.
It's I don't know. I'm curious as to like what they're gonna do moving forward. If it's all gonna just be like a blur of images, moving forward whenever they show like an act of God or whatever. But I think overall though they did a
like they
fantastic job.
did when the anointing came upon David. They kind of like showed like Samuel seeing David, like what's happened with David and what is going to happen. Because like David, I guess, always kind of knew, like they kind of play out that like David knew he was always meant for something greater. Like he wasn't
Mom
meant to
said
just be
so.
a shepherd.
Exactly. Yeah, his mom planted that seed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so like this kind of coming to fruition here, like it kind of showed like a glimpse into his future. I feel like for David to see like, oh, I am meant for more. And so now I think this, like now that like I think anything that they've done in this show that like is written in the Bible, they've done a really good job with portraying. Like all the filler stuff like has been fine too and stuff, because you know, like you got to have that. Like if it was just right out of what we have in scripture, wouldn't be a very long show and it wouldn't be very entertaining.
Actually, like I kind of want to see that. Like just a show that has like 8 lines of dialogue.
Yeah. Like but yeah, like the whole anointing of David, from him showing up asking for Jesse and like going through his brothers and saying, oh, surely this one's the one, and God's like, no, I have rejected him. And going through, and then he's like, do you have any more? And they're like, oh yeah, just David out in the field. And there he's like, okay, we won't eat until he gets here. And then he comes and he anoints him, and like yeah. And then I think it also like the registering on like his brother's faces and his father's face, like what just happened to, what that means like for the current political situation too, where David is anointed king, but Saul is still reigning. Like what that means for their family. Yeah. Really like, oh crap. What, like
coming from a family that's already been disgraced in their tribe,
Yeah.
and from a boy who is the reason for the disgrace apparently in this
God loves
show.
to do that, though.
And so like it's a lot for them to kind of process.
Yeah, but also like the fear of like what is Saul gonna do to us, knowing that David, because
that'd be considered treason.
Yeah,
in Saul's
exactly.
eyes.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Super that would definitely be super awkward, honestly. But yeah, I think these first 3 episodes are pretty good. Like you said, I like the things out of the Bible seem to check out.
Yeah.
And just gotta always remind the couch, like, guys, sometimes you use like things to like tell stories. So like the whole David getting a spear in the tummy, I don't think that's how it actually played out. Like I think that's a use of visuals to do a thing called character development, and things like that. So yeah, I mean, of course, not everyone's gonna please everybody when it comes to anything regarding the Bible. So you got to keep that in mind. But overall, I think it's pretty good. I think like visually, pretty good. Acting was good. Didn't see much cheese, or maybe even any cheese. I thought it was like pretty solid across the board.
Very well made.
And we're already
oh yeah, well
that was a little cheese.
Which one was it?
I killed a lion. He's like, that was a little.
That's like just a little bit of Michael Cera slipping out, like. But yeah, we're already like next week, halfway through the season. There's only 8 episodes. We've knocked out 3 already. So yeah, moving forward, podcast episodes probably be a little bit shorter. But we'll also at the same time be able to talk more in depth about things happening in the episode, because we'll only be covering 1 episode. So excited about that. Thank you guys for jumping on here and recording this with me. Go ahead and tell everyone again where they can find you and what you guys are doing over at Bear Fruit.
Yeah, probably the easiest way to find us would be on our website. It has links to everything, so that's bearfruit.media, and no .com or anything like that after that. Just bearfruit.media, and yeah, we're on all podcasting platforms. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook and Instagram, and yeah, we're just digging through the Bible.
We're a faith-based podcast, and our mission, we feel, is just to equip believers, equip Christians to bear fruit, which is kind of like what we talk about in our first podcast episode, which is like Christ-like character. So we're basically learning together, like we're on this journey of faith of learning how to develop, how to walk in that Christ-like character, and how God is shaping us for that, and how to be productive for his kingdom. And so that's just the gist of it. But like, we recorded our first episode. It's launching Thursday, March 6th. So we can, we're really looking forward to that launching, and we're excited for what we're doing. It's going to be good.
Got a lot of fun guests line up. And in case you're wondering, we're every first and third Thursday, and fifth Thursday, we're doing like testimony videos for people to enjoy for that as well. So
people can come on and share their stories. And
there you go. The link to your website will be in the episode description, so go click that and go follow them on all the podcasting platforms. Or just the one that you listen on. But if you want to be really nice, you follow them on all of them. That'd be nice. Looking forward to the rest of the season and digging into what Wonder Project has in store for us with the House of David. So go ahead, subscribe here at Showboys, and leave a comment. Let us know what you thought about the first 3 episodes here, and what you're looking forward to as the rest of the season unfolds. And until next time, we'll see you next week. Have a good one.